join tonight in one of the most emotion-packed issues of our time.
Let's talk about Canada's flag for a moment.
That it is time now for Canadians, in the course of our national evolution, to unfurl a flag that is truly distinctive and truly national in character.
You know, we went almost a century without our own flag. In fact, in true Canadian fashion, our flag was created by committee. Who opposed it? Veterans, because veterans had fought for generations under the red ensign. The maple leaf that many of us have grown up under, many of us put on our backpacks when we go to Europe. In fact, a lot of Americans have put Canadian flags on their backpack. It's an expression of our country, and it was created in 1965 at the request of Prime Minister Pearson, a Liberal Prime Minister who knew that after a century, Canada needed its own flag. He charged a war veteran, John Matheson, to come together and bring people together to create a flag that was distinctively Canadian. The maple leaf, long a symbol of our country and carved into tunnels during the Great War in France. The maple leaf was always a symbol for our country. And the two panels of red represented sea to sea, and this was brought together through John Matheson, who'd almost died serving in the Italian campaign. And what he gave Canada was the most important symbol of our country, something you see around the world that brings us pride when we're overseas and brings us together when we're home.
Story out of British Columbia. A First Nation says the remains of more than 200 children have been located, buried on the site of a former residential school, in fact, the largest residential school in the entire national network from the time.
5 months ago, the Prime Minister asked for the flags to be put to half-mast after the terrible discovery of graves at the former residential school site in Kamloops, British Columbia. It was appropriate to do that. The residential school period in our history, which ran more than a century, is a scar on the heart of Canada. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission, created by Prime Minister Harper, created calls to action so that we could heal and address the trauma that is with Indigenous peoples today as a result of residential schools. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission gave us 93 calls to action to try and heal and reconcile our past with our present and our future. Reconcile. That means the truth of coming to grips with the horrors of residential schools, but also building a better country that engages Indigenous peoples in the process of healing from intergenerational trauma. That is reconciliation. Part of those are calls to action 71 to 76 to deal with former residential school sites and graves that are there, to deal with missing children, to deal with closure for families. There's also a call to action 81 about building a permanent monument here in Ottawa. That is how we can remember this scar in our history as a country. You can be proud of the country because the generations today that were not part of the residential school saga for our country will be the generation that heals the wounds from that part of our history. That is reconciliation. Symbolism blocking real action is actually holding back reconciliation, and it's not allowing us to commemorate other important parts of our history and of our society. With Remembrance Day rapidly approaching, we should commit to remembrance and reconciliation out of respect for our veterans, including thousands of Indigenous veterans who served Canada with remarkable courage and distinction, even throughout generations when they were being discriminated against by the country they were risking it all for. Symbolic gestures should be temporary. They're not a substitute for real action, for getting things done, for moving on the calls to action, not just saying you're going to do something. 7 years ago, as Mr. Trudeau did, he skipped the first day of Truth and Reconciliation to go on vacation. Is he using symbolism over true substance on the road to reconciliation?
Again, Mr. Trudeau, when will you go to Kamloops?
I will go to Kamloops as soon as as it is right and possible for me to go there.
Mr. Trudeau famously said that he thought Canada was the first national state, that we had no shared identity, shared history, or commitment to one another. I disagree. I think you can be proud of Canada. You can be proud of its people and our symbols like the flag, while you also recommit to making the country better, to make up for injustices of the past, to walk the path of reconciliation. Because if you don't love your country, if you don't share that commitment to make it better with your fellow citizens, will you dig deep to deliver on the 93 calls to action? Will you actually deliver on clean drinking water on reserve? Will you deliver with fighting the inequalities we see in our society of today? You have to love your country to make it better. When we raise the flag, let's recommit to making our country the true north, strong and free. Let's commit to remembering those who've served us in the past and who are serving us in uniform around the world today. And let's recommit to the path of reconciliation with Indigenous peoples.